One email described an Epstein victim list, which left dozens of names exposed, and worse, the DOJ published dozens of unredacted nude images on its website showing young women or possibly teenagers. That is so shockingly awful that, again, there's nothing I can say.
Most controversies eventually fade from the headlines. The Epstein story somehow does the opposite. Just when it seems to be slowing down, it returns with even more documents, more questions, and more attention. This time, the Justice Department released more than 3 million pages connected to the case. And suddenly, a story people thought was fading was back in the spotlight again.
I don't understand what the interest or what the fascination is. I really don't. And the credible information's been given. Don't forget, we went through years of the Mueller witch hunt and all of the different things, the Steele dossier, which was all fake. All that information was fake. But I don't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. It's pretty boring stuff. It's sordid, but it's boring. And I don't understand why it keeps going.
But while the documents grabbed attention, Donald Trump questioned why people were still focused on the Epstein files at all. He described the material as unremarkable and suggested there was nothing truly new worth discussing. Yet history shows something simple. The moment you tell the public there's nothing to see, curiosity usually spikes instead of fading.
Donald Trump forced an underage girl to perform oral sex and hosted big orgy parties with young girls at one of his golf clubs. Even if these particular parts of the files that the Justice Department released and are denied by the White House as not being proven.
Then Trump addressed one of the most talked about elements of the case, Epstein's private island. He stated that he was invited but never went, emphasizing he chose to stay away. Still, in a case built on networks, meetings, and associations, even a denial becomes part of the larger public debate, rather than closing it.
The DOJ said it identified over 6 million potentially responsive pages, but is releasing only about 3.5 million after review and redactions.
And then another headline followed. Reports highlighted thousands of files that allegedly referenced Trump, along with tens of thousands more tied to Trump, his family, and Mar-a-Lago. On their own, numbers don't tell a story, but in a case already under intense scrutiny, they tend to fuel speculation rather than settle it. And this is where the situation becomes more complex. Because in massive document releases like this, context is everything. A single mention in a file doesn't automatically reveal meaning, intent, or involvement, but in the absence of clear explanations, even small references can take on outsized significance. Some people comb through every detail looking for hidden connections, while others argue the material is being misread or exaggerated. The same information, depending on interpretation, can produce completely opposite conclusions. What makes the Epstein story stand apart from most political controversies is that it never fully settles into a final narrative. Just when public attention begins to drift elsewhere, another batch of documents, another report, or another headline pulls it back to the center of discussion. Each cycle brings new analysis, new arguments, and renewed disagreement over what the information actually proves. That is why the Epstein files continue to dominate attention. For many, the issue has moved beyond individual documents and become a broader question of transparency, accountability, and how much of the full picture has actually been revealed. And as long as those questions remain open, every new release is almost guaranteed to reignite the debate all over again. At the same time, this ongoing attention also shows something bigger about how public trust and information interact. When a case spans years, involves large institutions, and produces massive volumes of records, people often look for certainty in places where the evidence is still fragmented. That gap between available information and clear conclusions is exactly what keeps the discussion alive, and what makes each new batch of documents feel like a continuation of a story rather than a conclusion to it. It also means the same document can be read in completely different ways depending on who is analyzing it. Some focus on names and connections, while others focus on legal relevance and verified facts. Neither side is necessarily working with different material, they're just assigning different weight to the same information. And over time, that difference in interpretation becomes the real story, sometimes even more than the documents themselves. Because once public debate takes over, the meaning of the case is shaped not only by what is released, but by how people choose to understand it. This is also why the conversation never really settles into a single accepted narrative. In cases like this, information doesn't arrive in a clean, final form. It arrives in layers, over time, and often without immediate clarity about its importance.